Hello all, welcome back to our lecture. Meko Denze is speaking. Today we'll be looking at ATP yield from fatty acid catabolism, and then we'll now briefly look at lipid synthesis. You will know what the reason why I used this adjective to qualify lipid biosynthesis. So let's take it off from there immediately. I have a beautiful quote from you from one of the greatest scientists that ever lived. He says, "In the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity." At any point in time, if you are seeing some unusual times, look much further. Believe you me, you're going to see an opportunity that will turn around your situation. All right, let's take it off from there immediately. In the last lecture, we looked at the catabolism of fatty acids, aka beta oxidation. And I gave you some hint on how to determine the total number of acetyl-CoA from breaking down of a particular fatty acid. So here, the first thing I'm going to do is to give you some important hint. We crunch some numbers with this hint by knowing how to get full ATP quantity when a particular fatty acid is broken down. So the number of acetyl-CoA, that is the number of acetyl-CoA that is released from a particular fatty acid is determined by knowing the total number of carbons in that fatty acid. So what do? If you get the total number of carbon and you divide it by 2, you're going to get the number of acetyl-CoA. If it is stearic acid, remember stearic acid is C18. Stearic acid is C18. So C18, if you divide it by 2, you're going to get 9 acetyl-CoA. Okay, what if we have C16? C16 is palmitate or palmitic acid. Palmitic acid is C16. So what it means, if you divide it by 2, we're going to get what? 8 acetyl-CoA. 8 acetyl-CoA. That's what we're going to get. So that is how you get that. Now, the number of circles or trips or spirals in fatty acid, in beta, complete breakdown of beta acid is determined by having determined this. Now, there are many ways you can do this. You can easily say, okay, like what I showed you earlier by calculating how many times, breaking it into 2, into 2, into 2. That is fine. But I like going by a shortcut that will make it more legit, that you can't get it wrong by any time. All right? So what I'm going to do, to know the number of trips, just do the number of acetyl-CoA minus 1. So if I want to know the number of trips of fatty acid spiral in breaking down C18, it's going to be 9 minus 1, it's going to be 8. In C16, it's going to be what? It's going to be 8 acetyl-CoA. If I want to know the number of trips, number of spirals or trips, it's going to be 8 minus 1, it's going to be 7 cycles. Now, it's important to know that the number of trips or cycles is equal to the number of NADH and is also equal to the number of FADH2. Don't forget that. The number of trips, in this case, as for palmitic acid, you're going to get 8 acetyl-CoA. You're going to get 8 acetyl-CoA, 7 spirals. So you're going to get 7 NADH, and you're going to get 7 FADH2. Now remember this. Remember these numbers. Remember that these following multipliers. Every acetyl-CoA generated in beta oxidation is going to get into the citric acid cycle or TCA, tricarboxylic acid cycle, and it's going to generate 10 moles of ATP. Don't forget that. Every NADH, single NADH, generate 2.5 moles of ATP, and every FADH will generate 1.5 ATP. We have had these numbers now. Having established these numbers, we're not going to go full into the calculation. But before we do that, let's start from this prep. You say, how many cycles of fatty acid spiral are needed for palmitic acid? Palmitic acid is C16. So what it means is that how many cycles is going to be, the way we're going to do the number of carbon, we first of all get the number of acetyl-CoA. Number of acetyl-CoA will be 16 carbon divided by 2 will give us what? 8 acetyl-CoA. I did it already in the last page, but just in case you didn't get it well, acetyl-CoA. What that simply means is that the number of cycles or trips will be 8 minus 1 equal to 7 cycles. So what that means, number 2 gives us the answer. We go back. It now says, how many acetyl-CoA are generated from C16 again? I already did it here. Already, it's going to be 8 acetyl-CoA. We're just going to mark that one. So this is how you do these problems. Now, let's now go to our ATP. ATP yield from palmitic acid catabolism. Now, our interest is palmitic acid, which is what? C16. That's why I use this as example. That's what we're going to be looking at. Now, remember again, let's just go through this quickly before let's just paraphrase what we did earlier. In beta oxidation, the activation reaction takes place in the cytoplasm, and I said it takes 2 moles of ATP. 2 moles of ATP are used. So you lose 2 moles of ATP. Now, in the first reaction, which is the dehydrogenation, remember every dehydrogenation reaction is an oxidation reaction. In the first oxidation reaction, we had 1 FADH2. In the second reaction is hydration. We don't have anything of interest. In the third reaction, we got NADH. This is another oxidation reaction here. Oxidation. And in the last reaction, we got what? We got acetyl-CoA. That is what we got. So in reaction 1, 3, and 4 is of our interest. Reaction 2 doesn't produce anything to us. So we're going to try to take down. So what are the notes we need? What we need in activation. In activation, we lost -2 ATP. And what do we know? What we know is that in the first, okay, let me say first oxidation reaction, or you can say dehydrogenation, first oxidation reaction. In the first oxidation reaction, we have 1 FADH. This is what you get in one cycle. In one cycle, this is what you get. Remember, we're talking about just one cycle. And then, in the second oxidation reaction, in second oxidation, we got what? In the second oxidation reaction, we got 1 mole of what? NADH. That's what we got here. 1 mole of NADH. And then in the last reaction, which is acetyl-CoA is produced, acetyl-CoA, in the last reaction is a cleavage reaction. You can just say cleavage. In the last reaction, there is a cleavage reaction. That's the process. Cleavage or rupture, we produce, in this cleavage reaction, we produce 1 acetyl-CoA. Yeah, this is what we have. These are the numbers we have at this point. Having had that, we're now going to go to what we have there. So I think, okay, I've already established what I should have just had the note for fatty acid directly, for palmitic acid. Okay, let's go to palmitic acid directly. For palmitic acid directly, this is general note. For palmitic acid, let's just do it. We already did that. In activation, we'll also take 2 ATP. Now, how many cycles will you have? Remember, if you divide 16 by 2, it gives you 8 acetyl-CoA. Let's start from there. So we're going to have 8 acetyl-CoA. Now, if we have 8 acetyl-CoA, so the number of acetyl-CoA will be the number of NADH and FADH2 is equal to the number of cycles, which is the number of acetyl-CoA minus what? 1. If 8 minus 1 will give us 7 FADH2, and we're going to get 7 NADH. So these are the numbers we're going to use in doing our calculation. So let's start. It's the name of the specific process, the amount of an energy currency, and the total ATP. So we're going to be naming the process. I don't want you to begin to think about the reactions. Just name it like I say, activation. Okay, the first process is activation reaction. In activation reaction, activation of fatty acid, we use 2 moles of ATP, and actually we are losing 2 moles of ATP there. In the first oxidation, I told you, in the first oxidation or dehydrogenation, whichever one you want to call it, in the first oxidation, you can say dehydrogenation, it doesn't matter. Both reactions were dehydrogenation reaction. What do we have? You generate what? FADH2. And in the case of palmitic acid, it's going to be 7 FADH2. So we're going to generate 7, no, that 7 didn't come out well. 7 FADH2. And then, So to know the total number of FADH, remember every FADH gives you 1.5. So you're going to say 1.5 times 7, and that's going to give us 10.5. This is going to be a plus now because we're gaining something here. We're generating this 10.5 ATP. And then in the second oxidation reaction, the same thing, or dehydrogenation too, we're getting what? 7 NADH, and that gives us every 2.5 times 7 is going to give us 17.5 ATP. And then the last reaction, in the last reaction is the cleavage reaction. In the cleavage reaction, we generate what? Acetyl-CoA. Cleavage generate what? Acetyl-CoA. So in the cleavage, we generate 10 acetyl-CoA. And 10 acetyl, remember, 1 mole of acetyl-CoA that goes through, it will go through the TCA. It's going to generate 10, it's going to generate what? Oh, that's a big mistake. Oh my God. Okay, I got that. Good enough, I got that. We're going to generate 8. How did I do that? It's going to be 8, not 10. For any reason, I don't know why I did that. So this is, please take note. I got that. This is 8 acetyl-CoA because it's 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Remember, anytime acetyl-CoA, 1 acetyl-CoA goes through TCA, generate 10 moles of ATP. So it's going to be 8 acetyl-CoA times 10 ATP molecules. And of course, that's going to give us 8 times 10 is going to give us 80 ATPs. So what are we going to do? We're going to add everything together. So if you add 80, let me use my calculator, 80 plus 17.5 plus 10.5. That gives us 108. 108 minus 2, that will give us 106. Okay, wait. Let me try to put it where I have my total. So it's going to be 106 ATPs. It's generated when 1 mole of palmitic acid is broken down in beta oxidation. Can you imagine how much ATP you can generate compared to the amount of ATP you generate in glucose? So that's why we said that lipids are efficient stores of energy. However, they are not the favorite to always metabolize. It is only in case of lack of carbohydrate or glucose. That is when they are called upon to be used as source of energy. Having said that, we'll now go to the next concept, ketone bodies. You see, ketone bodies are mainly produced in the liver, and the reason why they are produced is because of excess acetyl-CoA. So when there is too many acetyl-CoA produced by the breakdown of fatty acid that can be processed by the citric acid cycle, it results generation of ketone bodies. Remember, the moment beta oxidation takes place, it generates acetyl-CoA, like we said, 10 as the last one we saw with palmitic acid, 10 acetyl-CoA. Both of them had to be broken down inside what? It has to be broken down in the citric acid cycle to carbon dioxide and the releasing equivalents which are used in generating ATP. If that process is not happening as fast as possible, what happens? There is too many ATP that are not going to be channeled in the synthesis of these molecules we call the ketone bodies. This particularly happens during prolonged fast. The amount of glycolysis decreases because there's not enough glucose. So when it decreases, and glucose has to go to pyruvate, and pyruvate needs to be converted to acetyl-CoA. It is the acetyl-CoA that combines with oxaloacetate to now start the citric acid cycle. So what that simply means is that if glycolysis decreases, the amount of oxaloacetate that will start up citric acid cycle will also decrease, and that will reduce citric acid cycle itself. So that will result to the lack of oxaloacetate reduces the activity of the citric cycle, and that leads to the excess acetyl-CoA. Those acetyl-CoA that are being generated from lipids will now be floating around. If they don't have anywhere to go, what's going to happen? They will now be channeled in the synthesis of these molecules we call the ketone bodies. The ketone bodies include acetoacetate, the beta-hydroxybutyrate, and the acetone. Now, what essence are they? They become an immediate source of what? Fuel or energy to the brain, to the muscle, and to the heart during starvation. Remember, the brain cannot use any other source of energy apart from glucose. So therefore, if it cannot get it, it has to get it through other means because it cannot metabolize fat. All right. So, however, now something important. The other two molecules, the beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, are useful. They can further be broken down into acetyl-CoA and used for energy. However, acetone has no need to the body and it can only go out in acetone bread. This is typical for diabetic patients. Acetoacetate can be used as a fuel in most tissues. So, ketone bodies are carried by the blood and then they can be taken to the tissues that need them for oxidation and generation of energy. Under normal conditions, the concentration of ketone bodies in blood averages about 0.5 milligram per 100 mL. So if it goes beyond this, it will lead to conditions of ketosis, as we're going to see in the next slide. Now look at what happens here. Now, when there are too much acetyl-CoA, they're going to be channeled to the synthesis of these three molecules. The ketone bodies are acetoacetate, the beta hydroxybutyrate, which is formed from acetoacetate, and then the acetone, which is also formed from acetoacetate. Now, acetone is useless, has no use. Again, it can only go out through bread. However, beta hydroxybutyrate can be interconverted to acetoacetate, and acetoacetate can be converted back to acetyl-CoA, and acetyl-CoA can now be used for what? Energy for those cells that need them. Let's now talk about the conditions that are related to ketone bodies. Ketonemia is the presence of what? Elevated ketone bodies in the blood. Ketonemia, the nemia there means blood. The presence of high concentration of ketone bodies in the blood, usually higher than 20 milligram per 100 mL. That's what we call ketonemia. So ketonuria means the presence of ketone body in urea as a result of ketonemia. What it simply means is that the renal threshold of what ketone bodies has been breached, and therefore they're going to be reabsorbed in the kidney tubule and expressed in the urine. It occurs at levels of about 70 milligram per 100 mL when the renal threshold of ketone bodies is exceeded and ketone bodies are excreted in the urine. So acetone breath is a condition in which acetone can be detected in the breath of some individuals, particularly people who are suffering from chronic diabetes, type 1 diabetes, will always be usually associated with acetone breath. Ketosis is a condition in which all these three conditions exist. Ketonemia, increased blood ketone bodies. Ketonuria, expressing ketone bodies in the urine. And acetone breath is the breath of the person. You can feel the smell of acetone. Now, these conditions can lead to what we call ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis, remember, these ketone bodies are acidic. They can easily ionize to release hydrogen ions. The buildup of this hydrogen ion reduces the concentration of blood, and that results to a type of acidosis called ketoacidosis. And ketoacidosis usually leads to ketoacidotic coma, which is particularly a common cause of death in people who have untreated diabetes, particularly diabetes type 1. Having said that, we'll now talk about, like I said, ketone bodies and diabetes. You know, in diabetes, glucose is in the blood, particularly when the person eats, but the cells cannot take them up, because part of the job of insulin is to make sure that the cells, it stimulates the cells to take up what? To take up glucose and break them down in glycolysis. When insulin is lacking, remember, in diabetes, the person is lacking insulin. It's just lack of insulin or in type 1, or lack of insulin receptors in type 2. So when this glucose, in type 1 particularly, there is too many glucose in the blood, but the cells cannot get it. So the cells of the muscle, the liver and adipose tissue cannot get it, therefore it is low. Cells don't have enough oxygen, so they don't have enough glucose, but they need energy because they have to break it to energy. What do? The cells they are metabolically starved, and they switch to other sources of getting this glucose. And the source of getting this glucose is what? They do is gluconeogenesis, which is the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. And also, what do? They also get their energy in fat or protein catabolism. Remember, if the moment you begin to break fat particularly, you begin to generate a lot of acetyl-CoA. So the use of fat as energy means generation of too many acetyl-CoA. And when there are too many acetyl-CoA that the body cannot be processed by the citric acid cycle, what happens? They will be channeled into ketone bodies. That is why people who suffer from diabetic mellitus usually have a lot of ketone bodies. So in type 1 diabetes, the oxaloacetate is low due to excess gluconeogenesis. So the acetyl-CoA from the fat or protein catabolism does not go into the TCA cycle, but rather into the production of ketone bodies. Acetone, like I said, can be detected in the breath of individuals with type 1 diabetes. We now go to the next concept, synthesis of fatty acid. We're not going to talk much about synthesis of fatty acid because of the complexity, but I'm just going to highlight it a few things and compare it with degradation. You see, the pathway for both of these guys are opposing. This is synthesis, this is breaking down, right? Now, they are not particularly the reverse of each other, but there are a few things we need to talk. Now, the breaking down or degradation of fatty acid in beta oxidation occurs in the mitochondria. Remember that? It takes place in the mitochondria. It's an aerobic process. Now, the biosynthesis takes place in the cytoplasm. Now, this is their difference. What is common on both of them? One thing common to both of them is that the breaking down of fatty acid results to acetyl-CoA molecules, 2 carbon units. Whereas, and the synthesis starts from what? Acetyl-CoA, which are 2 carbon units. So both processes require 2 carbon unit atoms as a result of involving acetyl-CoA, which is particularly acetyl-CoA is generated mainly in the what? Mitochondria, either through beta oxidation or the breaking down of pyruvate acetyl-CoA. And then for synthesis to start, this acetyl-CoA need to leave the mitochondria and now be transported into the cytoplasm where the biosynthesis of lipid take place. So the synthesis of lipid is very complex and it is undertaken by a much more complex enzyme. The multi-enzyme complex that does the job of the synthesis of fatty acid is called the fatty acid synthetase system. Now, this is very complex. It consists of 6 enzymes and 1 carrier protein, like a bearing protein that holds all these enzymes together. It is called the SA carrier protein, ACP. So what simply happens, I'm just going to make a summary. It is, if you want to produce palmitic acid simply means 8 acetyl-CoA. So 8 acetyl-CoA will combine together to undergo 4 processes to build up palmitic acid. And like I said, the synthesis uses a reducing equivalent. The reducing equivalent used in the synthesis is not NADH, it is NADPH. The nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate reduced is used in the synthesis of what? Lipid or fatty acid. So after synthesis, fatty acid can be modified then. After synthesis, they can be modified into triglyceride by what? By being incorporated into glycerol and stored in the adipose tissue. The liver can also modify them more by what? Increasing the chain length, increasing the length of the chain. Usually the first one to be synthesized is palmitate. So palmitate can either be made longer by increasing the length of the chain, or can be shortened to make, if you need like a shorter one like myristic acid or lauric acid, you're going to make it shorter. Or it can be saturated or desaturated using both saturating or desaturating enzymes. So after synthesis of palmitic acid can now undergo various modifications into different types of fatty acids. So that is the much we can take in fatty acid synthesis. So before we finish, let's just talk about this. Is important. Now, the human body cannot synthesize 2 polyunsaturated fatty acid. The lean oleic fatty acid, which is an omega-6 fatty acid, and the lean olenic fatty acid, which is an omega-3 fatty acid. Look at them here. So remember, omega means we are counting from the what? The terminal end or the metal end of the group. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is omega-6. Let me write the shortcut for omega. This is omega-6 fatty acid, which is what? The lean oleic acid. Lean oleic acid. And then the lean olenic acid is 1, 2, 3. If you can, 1, 2, 3. So this is omega-3 fatty acid. So this is lean olenic acid. Both of these two cannot be synthesized in the human body. They must be gotten from the diet, and as a result they are called essential fatty acid. Now we obtain them the diet. They cannot be converted to any other type of saturated to any other type of polyunsaturated fatty acid. However, you have to first get them from what? The diet, because the body does not have the enzyme machinery to produce them. Now, we'll finish with two reflection questions. It says, which of the following fatty acids that cannot be synthesized by the human body? I told you there are two of them, the linoleic and the linolenic. And if you look at this, meristic, this saturated, we can produce this, we can produce this, we can produce all this saturated. The one we can produce is this. So the answer is what? Linoleic. We go to the next problem. The last, but not the least, of this lecture, we'll finish it with our reflection 4. It says, where does fatty acid synthesis take place? Of course, remember, the catabolism or breakdown of fatty acid takes place in the mitochondria, but the synthesis takes place in what? In the cytoplasm. It does not take place here. It does not take place here. It does not take place. It takes place in the cytoplasm. Having said that, we've come to the end of this lecture. Thank you for listening. Bye.